I want to talk about, right, who's got the best chance of winning the league next season, because this is actually a really interesting topic. Because let's start at Manchester City, right? They look terrible at the moment. They need a refresh. They need a rebrand. They have spent 180 million in January to initiate that, that rebuild. But you see what's there now, and you look at players like, Ederson, Stones, Kovacic, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Jack Grealish, De Bruyne has announced he's leaving, Foden way off it. It feels like there's major surgery to be done at City.
There's also a big contract situation brewing for Manchester City over the next couple of years. They've got an awful lot of their squad is up either next year or the year after. So Hugo Viana's coming in, and it's not an easy job. Is it? I know the previous sporting director is staying on for a bit to help and kind of have a period of transition, but that's a huge task, and you're not going to be able to do that rebuild all in one window. So it's going to take some time.
What about Pep as well? Like, we've never seen him in this position where he's not been questioned, but there's a question to be answered, because we've never had to see him sort of stay this long and refresh a whole team when it's come to the end of its cycle. What sort of Pep Guardiola will we see? Will we see one coming out the block sort of saying, don't you doubt my credentials, watch this? Yeah. Or do we see one that couldn't quite reignite that flame at City after that famous team he built that's been so dominant?
I think that this season will have hurt him greatly. I think the fact that we're in April and, okay, they've got the FA Cup semi-final, but to not be involved in the Champions League latter stages, to not be involved in a Premier League title race, these are all things that will hurt him and galvanise him for next season. He won't want to be in this position this time next year. So I think he'll come up with a refresh. He's shown before he's capable of coming up with something new, isn't he, and fresh. A lot of the ideas that we see in the Premier League generally have started with Pep. So there'll be something different for Manchester City this season, but it is also, as you say, real uncharted territory for him, because he's never been at a club this long. He's never had to... I mean, when he went into Manchester City and took over from Pellegrini, I think from what I remember, they had a lot of ageing players coming towards the end. So he did have to refresh it, and they didn't do great in his first season, did they? But then obviously went on to go and do what they did. I think much will depend on who sticks around, because you still need, even if those players aren't going to play, some of them every week, you still need them in the dressing room for the culture, and integrating new players isn't easy. When players used to come into Manchester City, they probably took a year to settle, but there was lots of really good players around them. I think over the last few windows, not including January, the players that they have brought in haven't really settled straight away. No. Maybe some of them aren't good enough. Yeah, and then there's a lot to do. And then, unfortunately, the people that run the dressing room and are stalwarts, they've all fallen off a cliff at the same time. It's been a terrible season.
I think there's probably too much to do for them in terms of winning the league next year. Listen, you can never write off Pep Guardiola, so I wouldn't say no chance, but I think it's really difficult for City to get it right, only because of the sheer number of players that have reached that shelf life. I didn't even put Gundogan is in that one. Like I say, Ederson's going to be on his bike. Stones the injuries are just piling up, can't stay fit.
I don't recognise Gundogan when I watch Manchester City this season.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Just don't recognise
the drop-off.
Good for Barca last season as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that drop-off is just instant. Kovacic is, he's not going to be the decider of them winning a league. Like I said, Gundogan, Bernardo Silva.
Rodri being back might help a little bit.
Will help a lot, definitely. Jack Grealish has got to get out of there. It's over. I thought that, but then I think he may just be able to cling on for another year and maybe get some games in the middle. Because probably Doku's not great as well. Like,
Doku's got no end product.
He's a bottle of fizzy pop. You don't know what you're getting with him. Yeah. Savinho, he looks like he's got some ability, the kid. Oscar Bob, he coming back in, youngster. Nico O'Reilly. So they've got some youngsters there. McAtee, see what happens with him. Phil Foden's form's completely gone. I don't know what's happened to him. Plus, Krishanov's come in, going to need time. Doesn't look the best, but needs time. I'm not sure. I think there's way too much. I don't think it's going to be City. Let's move on to Liverpool. They're, limping over the line a little bit.
Yeah, tired. They're very fatigued, very tired.
Played a lot of games this year. Poor against Fulham from a defensive standpoint, especially in that first half. Really bad as I've seen Liverpool play for a long time. But, question marks over what's going to happen with Trent. Probably going to move on. There's reports that Van Dijk's saying, there's progress with a new deal.
Him and Salah will stay.
Salah is a stay, but then it's the first time he's going to have money to redo his squad, because that's, even though Liverpool won the league, they haven't felt like a generational team, but
No.
they might out of default be the favourites again just because of a little bit of continuity, maybe?
They wouldn't be the team I'd pick now for next season. I think you're going to see a lot of incomings at Liverpool in the summer as well, a bit of a refresh. I think they've had a core of maybe 14 to 16 players that Slot's been willing to use and rely on. But then he has kept the same 11 for a lot of the season, bar one or two changes. So it shows that he doesn't have full faith and trust in his squad. I think he deserves a huge amount of credit. To win the league in your first season in the Premier League is a phenomenal achievement. He's kind of getting lost a bit at the moment.
Especially after Klopp.
Yeah, he's made that job look easier than it should be. I respect the fact he didn't come in and be like, I need this, I need that. Worked with what he got, kind of reinvented people from within. You look at what Gravenberch's done this season. He's become fatigued recently, and the defeat against Fulham has been coming for weeks in the Premier League, hasn't it? So there'll be work to do for Liverpool in the summer. They'll be right up there again. Slot's a really good manager, but I think they'll be concentrating on kind of building a squad that's ready to fight on multiple fronts, because they fell out of the Champions League earlier than they would have liked. FA Cup gone, League Cup obviously they lost the final, but we got to that final and they were very, very tired. Just had a big game in the Champions League and they didn't have enough to refresh.
One thing I think we praised Liverpool for when they were in great form this season is that squad depth. The conversations around Liverpool has been look at someone like Darwin Núñez. He comes off the bench against Brentford, rescues the game. Look at PSG, they're struggling, getting battered. They bring on Harvey Elliott and Núñez changes the game. You look at Gakpo, you look at Curtis Jones at times. Like, we have actually praised that side of their game, ironically.
Stories can change, though, as the season goes on. At that point in the season, they're absolutely flying. They've only lost one game. They're swatting off everything that's in their sight. When they go behind, they're winning, and it's a very different story to what's happened now. They've run out of gas, quite simply, haven't they? And again, I'm not trying to take away from the achievement at all, because I think it's a phenomenal achievement for Liverpool, and people are overlooking it just because they've been knocked out of a few other competitions recently. What they've done this season has been incredible, and Arne Slot is up there as manager of the year. I'd just give it Nuno, but I think Arne Slot obviously is in the conversation. But there is going to be a little bit of reconstruction in that Liverpool squad, losing a big player in Trent. He's a huge loss. They've lost players in the past. Obviously, they sold Coutinho for big money, but Klopp managed to reshape that squad and turn it into an absolute winning machine, albeit probably not getting all the trophies that quality of that side deserved. How are they going to replace Trent? How are they going to build other areas that need
big question marks?
They need a striker,
definitely, and Jota's not fit enough as well. So, Dan, do you know what this means? This means that Arsenal are favourites for the Premier League.
That would be who I'd pick now.
This means that Arsenal are favourites for the Premier League because the only thing they need, well, I think they need some work in midfield as well. They need some forwards, but
Zubimendi's coming. Exactly.
They said it. They need to fix up the midfield as well. Dependent, especially if Thomas Partey leaves, which looks probably Jorginho as well.
I think Jorginho will end up staying
for one more year experience. The El Nani vibe. So they need the striker, right? All out, go hell for leather for a striker.
They'll get it this summer.
Do you trust Arsenal? That's what I'm saying, because they should have been the ones next in line to do it this year, but they let Liverpool just come through out the blue. Inexperienced manager in this league, first season after Klopp, and Liverpool have picked them to the title. Could that happen? Where they let City back into it, or let Liverpool do it again, or open up the door for likes of yourselves, Newcastle, to challenge for the league.
Yeah, I think I'd pick Arsenal now. They've got the least surgery that's required out of anyone in the kind of traditional top six.
New sporting director.
I would say new sporting director is going to come in with some fresh ideas. So we don't know how that's going to work, but I can't say that it's going to completely disrupt Arsenal, because, like I say, their squad doesn't need major surgery. They maybe only will sign 3 or 4 players. Obviously, one of them they've got to get right in the striker. This is the window where they finally get a striker, and they've got to get that right. And that will require a little bit of a change from Arteta in the way they do things. Obviously, they've been playing with Havertz up front over the last couple of seasons. They've had not much luck this season, I would say. I'm not using that as an excuse, the injuries, but Saka being out for the long period that he's out for, that would hurt any team. If Salah was out for that long, it would have hurt Liverpool as well. So I think that is a factor to why Arsenal have underperformed this season. I think they're a young side still that's growing together. They've experienced a lot together. They've got a great core. Defensively, I still think they're the best team in the Premier League. They've got the best centre-back partnership in the Premier League. If they can just tweak a couple of things, I would make them favourites because they're going to have the least turnover in the summer.
It's whether I trust Arsenal to really home in on those like 3 key signings.
They will.
They don't
New
need to do
sporting
a lot,
director is not going to mess
surely,
around.
that's what I mean. I'm like, surely now Arsenal, especially when you look at the work that the other teams have to do, if they let somebody else other than them come and sweep in and take it again, it's like, Arteta's going to be under serious pressure. Oh, listen, competing for it, missing out by a couple of points or a point on the last day, there's context.
Yeah, of course.
There's big, I'm not saying he
can't
doesn't win the
legislate
league,
for
has to
those
go.
kind of things.
But for me, they don't need that much. You're screaming out for that striker. You're screaming out for another central midfielder and probably another forward of top quality, maybe multifunctional on the left or the right can pitch in. But for me, they know what needs to be done. And they just got to go out and do it. Chelsea and Man United, Spurs, obviously no chance.
Who knows with Chelsea what they'll do in the summer?
Yeah, and Chelsea, they're just too scattergun for me. I don't even know if Maresca will be there, let alone go for a title challenge.
Can I just say on Arsenal, they'll be full of regret for this season. There's caveats,
Already,
caveats to it,
this,
but they'll be full of regrets that they haven't put up more of a fight this season because the opportunity was probably there. Even if they'd have beat Everton at the weekend, Liverpool losing, there's like a glimmer, isn't there? They've lost some silly games that they probably didn't lose the 2 seasons before Arsenal, so they'll be full of regrets. But I think you're right to caveat it because they've gone really, really close 2 years running with Manchester City. And I know everyone's going to say you need to win a trophy, and I completely get that. But you do have to put a bit of context around it that you are at those times up against absolute freaks. Like what Manchester City do, the point tallies they've got. Arsenal would have won the league in so many seasons with the 2 point tallies that they've got. It's a bit like Klopp, isn't it? Close so many times, only won the one Premier League. But still, like, it doesn't mean he's a flop.
No, but I think Arsenal, they have still faltered at like similar stages against similar teams where they haven't learnt from their mistakes. I don't necessarily think it's been because City have been like outrageous points tally wise, like the 98, 100 point, where it's like, oh my goodness, like you lose one game, you're done. I do think Arsenal have let themselves down in a few of the title race. The first title race, we were like, didn't expect them to do it. Last year's one, that little capitulation when they was you guys again.
They only lost one game in the second half of the
second
season,
half,
didn't they?
but that's when the damage, when you're going up against City, the damage can be done from before that.
Like I say, you're up against freaks at that point who just keep churning out results.
This year's
the
one that's unforgivable.
Yeah, that's where they'll like I say, even though they've had injuries, they'll be full of regrets for what's happened this season.
What about you, Villa? Any chance of competing? Like you said, you were top at Christmas. That happens.
I'm very wary of coming off as absolutely deluded when I talk about Villa.
Rory does it all the time.
Well, that's true. People, I think, look, Villa obviously finished top 4. Then this season it's been about learning about being in the Champions League, being in multiple competitions, and the surgery they did in January was absolutely spectacular. And Villa now, man for man, depth-wise, have got a brilliant squad up there as one of the best in the Premier League, I would say. And they're on a really good run at the moment where you feel like they're going to churn out results and they're going to shoot themselves towards the top 5 and get Champions League. And I really hope we do. We're in the latter stages of the FA Cup semi-final coming up, quarter-finals of the Champions League. With this squad now that he's built, the next step would be, I'm not saying win the league, but, being in the mix, getting to February, March and thinking, oh, we've got a sniff here. And in all honesty, the way the Premier League's set and all the stuff we've just talked about, there won't be a better time for a team like Villa or Newcastle to try and push themselves up to that next level. Both have experienced Champions League football in recent years. Why not? It can happen. It's like we've just done a whole segment. It's difficult to choose someone for next season. Obviously, teams are going to buy players. We don't know how the Club World Cup's going to affect things. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Are we wrong to talk about Forest?
No. If they're going to be in the Champions League,
heavily.
It's going to be a bit like Villa this season for them, where you're kind of feeling yourself out and working out what's going on. You're not used to competing at that end. So I'm not ruling them out completely, but I think it would be difficult for Forest.
Yeah. Well, Dan basically said it there. Villa to win the Premier League next season. He can see it.